Welcome. I'm Michael Tomano, and this is How to Be a Superhero, the show, and I'm author of How to Be a Superhero, the book. And today I have a very, very special show, and it is with Daniel Glassman, and he has a very inspiring story to share with us. And I can't wait to hear more. And so I want to hear from Dan. So Dan,
Uh,
do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
sure. Thank you for having me, Michael. Like a lot of people here in Gainesville, I came up here 36 years ago to do a few years of school and thought I'd head back to South Florida. And thankfully, 36 years later, I'm a double UF grad and, have a beautiful family. And I'm just blessed to be able to live and work here in the legal field. So I'm an attorney, and I'm just so blessed to be part of the Gainesville Gator family.
Awesome. So I'm not sure the best way to intro you, except, well, I guess I do know the best way to intro you. So one of the things that I think is really important, and I think it is a superpower, and definitely your superpower, is to be able to take a negative situation and figure out a way to turn it into a positive situation. Because as I like to say to people, negative energy is still energy. And so you can use that energy, that negative energy, to create something positive. And so Dan had a negative situation that happened to him, and he turned it into a positive situation and created a really useful resource. So Dan, would you like to talk about that? Talk about that a bit?
Sure, absolutely. Thank you so much, Michael. So it all started, at least this part of the story started in 2007. It was my 10th wedding anniversary. Looking back, if I had written my story 10 years before that, I couldn't even imagine writing it anymore or having many more blessings and gifts in my life than I had. I was a successful attorney who had a very good practice. I was married to a beautiful woman who we had met in undergrad. She was an anchor and local TV reporter. We had two wonderful children, ages 5 and 8. And we even had, the white picket fence and the dog. So if I had written the script exactly like I wanted it 10 years later, it wouldn't have changed a thing. And at our 10-year anniversary, I had got us reservations to go down to Tampa. And we had a hotel with a spa and the golf course. I was going to go to the golf course. She was going to go to the spa, and we were going to celebrate our 10-year anniversary. Only she started having headaches. And, when you got two young children and full-time jobs, headaches are not surprising. We went to the doctor and they said, well, cut back on the caffeine, try to get more sleep, do a little more exercising. Only the headaches kept getting worse and worse. And so finally we ended up at an MRI, and I figured, okay, we'll go run in, do the MRI, run out. I've got to get back to work and I've got clients waiting. And so we do the MRI and the doctors say, can you just wait a few minutes? We'll be right with you. So we sat there and thinking of myself as way more important than I am. I keep looking at my watch, noting how much billable time I'm wasting. 10 minutes turned to 30 minutes, and I go to complain. They said, we'll be right with us. And then 30 minutes turned to almost an hour. And I go to complain again, and the person who was nice behind the desk says, well, come on back to us. And she walked us down into this long hallway, and she put us into this room. And I'll never forget the room. It was this gray room, and she closes this door, and it's this huge conference table. And I'm sitting there next to my wife, Beth, and I'm definitely not the smartest guy in any room, especially when my wife is in it. But I knew deep and down inside of the pit of my stomach that something wasn't right. And we sat there in silence. And before I know it, there was a knock on the door. And literally I heard her gasp and my heart sunk. And the door opens up, not one, not two, but 5 doctors walk in the room. And that's the beginning of the story when they tell us that she had a primary brain tumor called a glioblastoma multiforme, which is a stage 4 brain cancer. And that's kind of where the story begins. And I wrote a book about everything that she went through and how we battled through it. And the book is called The Next Step.
I think that's geez, so it's so powerful. And so you were talking about how each part of the book is a different story. And would you like to mention what the significance is about, like how you set up the chapters?
Sure. So the first line of the book is, it's 5 o'clock in the morning and it's cold, wet, dark, and I'm sitting in the middle of a parking lot. And I start thinking about all of the things that brought me to this parking lot. And then I start worrying about where I need to go from here and whether I can do it and what's going to come of it next. And as I sit there, I raise to my feet. My feet are cold and numb. And all of a sudden, there's a crackle of gunfire, and I begin to run, literally run for my life. And that's the start of the book. And the book ends about 5 hours later in real time, back in that same parking lot. But it tells the life story of 20 years. And ultimately, the book is broken up into 26.2 chapters. Each chapter is another story. Each story is another mile marker in my life. And the relevance of the 26.2 is it was actually a marathon, and the crackle of gunfire was the beginning of the marathon. And I was never a runner anywhere else before, but I soon learned that when you run, you have nothing but your thoughts. And as I run the marathon, all the memories rushed into my mind over those, miles and miles, and the different stories, some funny and heartwarming, many sad and gut-wrenching, but ultimately it's all the life lessons, or a lot of the life lessons that my wife was able to teach me and share in this journey, that as horrible as it sounds, that I was fortunate to be a part of, and a part of her life.
We talked about a number of important life lessons. What do you think are some of the most important life lessons that your wife taught you that we should share with our budding superheroes?
Sure. So whether it is cancer, whether it is depression, whether it is family or health, or all types of situations and circumstances, we really find ourselves involved in. One thing that I learned is none of us determine how we get here in this world. It's all where you're born. And we here in this country, no matter who you are incredibly blessed to be in a place that, for right or wrong, whichever side you on, really gives so many blessings. And we're so much luckier than so many other people in the world. But even with that said, there is so much hardship and things that we find ourselves in, some that were from our doing and what we caused, many of which, as with Beth and her diagnosis, was nothing that she did or contributed to that resulted in this horrible situation that she faced. And no one can control what happens to you or where you are in any point in your life. None of us control that. There's only one thing and one thing only that we all control. And that's how we deal with that situation and what's our next step and where we go from there. Because wherever you are, as bad as it is, as long as you're living, breathing, you have the opportunity to take a step in another direction. And so that is probably one of the biggest lessons that I learned, and why the book is called The Next Step, because that's something we all can control.
It's the only thing that we can really control. And I really think, I've been finding for myself, trying to not have expectations, like, especially, for certain outcomes, and just kind of really enjoying what is and being grateful what I have, versus being upset about what I don't have, or wish, did happen, or could be, or being upset, like, why are things this way? What, they should be this way. When I can let that go, I'm a million times happier. And also just, that for me, it was such a huge mental shift when my energy was focused on, why is this not working out? Why did this not work? Why I mean, even with YouTube, it can be like, why do I not have more subscribers or more views? It's like it's easy to go down that path versus like, what about all the awesome people that I've had on this show and continue to have on this show, or the amount of subscribers that I do have, the amount of hours that people are watching it, it's like a completely different energy. Like one's like a draining energy, and the other one is actually like an empowering and energizing energy. Maybe that's kind of redundant, but um, yeah.
100%. In fact, there's two really important stories and chapters in the book, both unbelievable lessons that we were taught, both by other people and through Beth and our life experiences. Following that diagnosis, we didn't go to Tampa, and we didn't get to go on our anniversary. We ended up on the 6th floor of Shands in a unit preparing for her surgery. And, the surgeons come in there and you don't know whether you're going to live or die. And she had to have what's called a craniotomy surgery, where they have to cut open her head, remove part of her skull and try to cut down and remove as much of this tumor as they can. And so you're so scared. And somebody sent us this article, and it was an article written by a man who had been battling cancer. And he talks about the worst part of his cancer journey. And he talks about the brain surgeries, which we kind of described, the craniotomy, where they cut down into your head, remove part of your skull. And the surgery itself has so many life risks. You can have sudden death, you can have an embolism. Even if you survive the surgery, you could have overwhelming damage that could leave you with significant mental, physical, or other permanent injury as a result of the surgery. And she didn't go through one, she went through many of those surgeries. And as this guy said, that's not the worst part of cancer. And then he talked about the radiation and the chemotherapy, which is actually the treatment for it. The radiation is they shoot these beams into your body to try to kill the cancer. Only, you lose you can lose your health just from the radiation. It's poisonous chemicals, and then they shoot you up with chemotherapy, which when the doctors handle the chemotherapy, they wear the drugs and the gloves and everything else because it's so poisonous. And most people die from the cure, let alone from the disease. And it makes you get violently ill and lose your hair and become so deathly sick. But that's not the worst form of cancer. And there's all these other treatments and things. What he says is the worst form of cancer is the mental and the psychological damage that it can play to you. Just the fear, the word, especially a young mother with 2 young children. The hardest part of cancer is not dying from it, but learning to live with it and learning to live to the best of your ability and overcoming those fears and those negative thoughts that can cause literally life paralysis, where you can't move and you just want to crawl into bed and you're just so afraid. But at that point, then you're losing your battle because you're already dying if you don't have the ability to live your life. And what he said was he did visualization, and it was really kind of cool. And he was a huge baseball fan. And this was during the time when there was the home run derby, and it was between the two, Sammy Sosa and Mark McGwire, and they were battling each other, and they were in the news. And he said he was a huge baseball fan. He said every time he had a negative thought, he would visualize himself balling it into a baseball and taking all those negative thoughts and those negative feelings and standing on the mound and throwing a fastball to his hero, Mark McGwire. And he'd literally watch Mark McGwire with his bulging muscles and 6'5", 250 pounds with this huge swing, and he'd watch it knock it out of his head. And that would make him feel better. And he said, on some days, he would throw 1 or 2 pitches and he'd get through the day. And other days where he had terrible fears or whatever, he might have to throw 10, 12, 15 pitches to get these negative thoughts in his head. And Beth said, well, I'm really, really tired and I don't know what to visualize. And I said, well, don't reinvent the wheel. Just do what he did. Next time you get a negative thought, you close your eyes, you ball it into a baseball and you throw it to Mark McGwire and let him knock it out of your head. And she said, that's great. Who's Mark McGwire? And she was very, very funny. But ultimately what we would do is she would use her visualization, and she would take her negative thoughts and she'd ball it up And she would throw pitches to our young son, Ben, who was 5 years old, and watch him with his little wiffle ball bat in her eyes, knocking it out. And it enabled her and empowered her whenever she had that fear and that depression, that negativity, to remove that from her mind so she could get through the day. And so that's kind of one of the extraordinary stories of what somebody shared with us. And there's many, many more about, just overcoming your negativity. And as you said before, being so thankful for what you have. Nobody's promised tomorrow. So if you don't utilize today, you're wasting the most blessed commodity that any human being is given, and that no human being is promised to get the next day.
It's really interesting that you say that, because I just had a very similar conversation with someone when I went walking today, and I realized too, like, we're not even actually promised today or the next minute. Like it. I mean, hopefully that's not like super scary to people, but I think it's good to keep in mind. And so one thing that I've actually been exploring, and I don't want to go too off on this unless I mean, actually everything that we pretty much talked about, you've had a different chapter in your book, which to me is fascinating. But I was reading about some samurais, and what they would do before bed and in the morning is they'd prepare for death. They would think about all the different ways that they could die. And it's something that I mean, it sounds morbid, but I've been kind of practicing it myself. And when you really address it, like when you really like give it power, it takes it away. Like, you know what I mean? Like when you're like this could happen to me, this could happen to me, this could happen to me. It's like, all right, well, what's like, there's nothing left. And really, like, because really our fear, I think, is fear of the unknown. It's like, all the unpredictable things of like, but like when you really give it attention, really give it power, and kind of see it for what it really is, it takes away that power.
Right. I agree 100%. And the one thing, another huge thing that I learned from Beth is, while we each have our own lives, can't take it with you, right? None of us, have yet to find the person to beat death, and it'll never happen. And so the only way that you can really live on forever is to share yourself with others. So that gets passed on, whether it's your wisdom, whether it's your love, whether it's your kindness, that gets passed on to somebody else, and they now have that. And that moves along and is shared. And if you can provide that to somebody else, I know you mentioned, even if you give someone a simple thing as a smile and say hello, and you give them that smile, that's something that you've given them that can be never taken away from you, even upon your death. That's passed on to somebody else. So, none of us really own anything or have anything other than our shared experiences and what we can provide others. And, as long as you make it positive and fulfilling, then I think we can all live forever.
Well, so what you did with the book too, I think, is so fantastic and meaningful, because by doing that, you've essentially immortalized your wife. Like she will, like her and her stories and her memory will always exist in there. And I also realized that you have another superpower of extreme courage, because even coming on the show and sharing that story, I mean, I'm sure not an easy thing for you to share. You went from bliss to total nightmare, and the whole family went to nightmare, just essentially overnight. And the fact that you are willing to relive it and share your story so that other people may benefit, I think that is one of the truest examples of being a superhero, essentially. And for anyone that wants to deep dive, I mean, you could even go into the hero's journey, and like the willingness to confront the unknown and the darkness, so that it can benefit other people. Like there's not much better that you could do for another human being.
Yeah. So in addition to Beth's amazing story, and it really isn't my story, it's her story, but thank you, because she's the true superhero, was all the other people that were part of this journey, whether with us or tangentially. And there were so many incredible acts of kindness and selflessness and giving that even the smallest thing that a person doesn't realize that they provide others has a profound effect on the people who are suffering in ways that are immeasurable. Even just small dosages of kindness or caring can really take a person that can be in such a deep, dark place and help them get out of it. And so, part of what the book talks about is the amazing people along this journey, that helped provide us the power to take that next step when you feel you're so exhausted and so beaten down and so tired that you don't know whether or not you could move your legs one more inch. But you realize that there's no alternative. And so you do. And the kindness of others is such a fuel to help people in their lives. And it's something we should all be cognizant of about, is you never know the situation or position anybody else finds themselves in. And so it's just as easy to react in kindness as it is in meanness or inconsideration. And if you have the opportunity, because you never know the reason, or at least Beth taught me, you should always try to strive for the kind reaction.
I completely agree on so many levels. One thing that I've really been trying to work on myself is, I think that myself included, it's easy to react, when someone does something mean to you or whatever, react and like want to say something judgmental or say something mean. People are so quick to say something mean to each other, but people aren't quick to say something nice about each other. And so I've been trying to get into the habit of, if someone does something nice to me, knee-jerk reaction, say show them appreciation, thank them for that. You know what I mean? Instead of like the quick mean thing and the quick, and making sure they hear that. Because just as you mentioned, we don't know where everyone is like in their mind. Someone could appear like happy and being, having like the best life ever, but they might be suffering inside. And you just saying, like, thank you so much for doing this for me, or even just saying hi to me or whatever, that could like totally change their mindset. Especially, I think a lot of times people forget that they have real worth. I think that's a real huge issue with a lot of people, including myself. And that having that reminder, it sometimes can just be kind of like the light bulb moment that can be life changing. And even just today, there was someone who gave me advice a few days ago, and I was like, oh, like, thank you so much for all the advice. Like, this is like what really helped, and I really appreciate it. It's just like there's only a few words from my text message, and I saw her today, and she told me, she's like, that text message meant so much to me. Like, you have no idea. Like, I was in a really bad place, like in my mind. And like when you said that, it just, it really brightened up my day. And it actually looked like she was almost like about to cry, like that it meant that much to her. And I'm just, thank you so much for the advice. Like, I really appreciate it. I had no idea like the amount of effect that it would have.
Yeah, I think that we lose sight of the power that we all have. We all think maybe, or many of us think we're insignificant, or we don't have a say, or we're not heard. But each and every one of us have the power to be part of a solution or to be part of the problem. And, I think the empowerment and recognizing that, hey, I can actually have positive change in ways that are easy for me, but can be so very impactful for other people. And when we do this, like this lady, and we give back to somebody, it actually fulfills us. And so that's kind of some of what Beth's philosophy was to pay it forward to others, and that the rewards always seem to come around in many, many ways. And so, we all have the power to negatively or positively affect a moment.
It's yeah, I really agree. It just, when you can help someone, yeah. And oh, so sorry, I just want to say too that yeah, I mean, you touched on it, that it doesn't need to be difficult either. To like, I think a lot of people are under the misconception that like helping other people needs to be like a big energy expenditure, or like they need to like donate to like this and this, or volunteer somewhere, or what I mean, that it needs to be this like big extravagant affair, like just like what we're saying, like just like you said before, like with a smile. Like for me, my favorite thing is just to say hi to people, and how many friendships that's opened up for me. It's crazy. It's amazing how just a little bit can go a long way, and just really change your life and their life. And now for me too, like, when after I've said hi to people and they say hi to me, I could be having a bad day, sometimes, and them saying hi to me brightens up my day. So it's just so interesting. And to me, it's almost a shame. Well, it is a shame to me that we are, that we aren't all like that, because in my opinion, like there's no reason for us to be mean to each other, and also be enjoying all our lives like so much better. Like we really just make things harder on ourselves. And I know that there's going to be times that there's like negative situations, and we all like, one thing that I've definitely found is we all have our thing. We all have our battle that we're dealing with. But as you mentioned, it's how we take that next step. It's how we react to it that really defines things. And I think that learning to not lash out at other people as a reaction, but try to even just ask for help. Like if you need help, ask for help. Or try to find advice, or some kind of positive way, or even just go outside for a walk and say hi to people. Like it's, to me, it's just like it's such a shame that we're so hard on each other, when it wouldn't take much work for us to like really be lifting each other up.
I agree completely. I believe in the inherent good of people, and that there is good and kindness in all. Just some squelch it and don't have the ability or the wherewithal to share it. And if they did, I think that it would enrich their lives, and obviously the lives of others. And I think it's a lesson that, and it doesn't have to be a lesson that you learn from a deadly diagnosis. But it's a lesson that if somebody can share some kindness onto you, and if you do that to someone that's really in need, hopefully they'll pay that forward to somebody else. And so you haven't just touched one life, but now you've touched all the lives that person has been inspired to touch. And before you know it, acts of kindness, can grow. Cancer cells, multiply and duplicate in horrific numbers, right? And I don't see any reason why kind acts can't do the same.
I think that's a really good point, because what I've realized is, that a lot of people, that were raised in like negative situations, and they might not know how to, how to act and handle these different situations. But if you can set the example by showing them kindness, that can completely flip things for them, potentially,
I
hopefully.
100% agree. And I think that, also when you find yourselves smiling at somebody and they smile back, I think you get that, you get that good nature and that great reinforcement back. And so, you get just as much out of it as they do. So, it is a selfless act, but it provides tremendous reward to the person when you do act in that manner.
And reward far beyond anything that we'd ever realize. I've mentioned this in a few of my my other shows, but it's a really big part of my book that like when you have these positive interactions with other people and you help brighten up their day, then everyone that they encounter, they're going to help brighten up their days, and then they go home to their family in a good mood, and they're brightening up their family's day. You know what I mean? And it can just ripple off infinitely,
Right.
potentially infinitely.
I think, yeah, I agree with that 100%.
So, were there any particular stories from the book that you like to share, or that you thought were particularly powerful?
There are so many. I personally, I think that there's a minimum of 26.2, stories that have impacted my life in so many ways, both large and small. As far as some things that might be impactful to others. There is one story, in fact, on my office wall here, I have a plaque from a young nurse named Sivan, who did the most incredible thing, for us. As part of our 10-year anniversary, we had bought a time capsule when we got married. And in the time capsule during our wedding, we filled out this whole questionnaire, and the questionnaire included, like, where do you see yourself in 10 years, and where do you work, and how many children do you have, and what are their names, what's your income, and then everybody at our wedding, we asked them to put a little note in there to share something, whether it's an experience we had, or kind of words of advice or counsel, or any pictures. And we stored it up in this time capsule, and we held it for 10 years. And on our wedding anniversary, we were going to take it out and open it up. And that was one of the things we were both so excited for our anniversary. Well, we are now the night before her surgery. And my daughter, who was only 8 years old, was in there with us at the time. And the doctor has to come in, and the doctor has to do something called informed consent. Informed consent is when the doctor has to go over all the horrible things that can happen during surgery, right? And then have you sign a form that if any of these horrible things happen, then you've been told about them and they're in your medical file. So you've been advised about them. And those horrible things include sudden death and hemorrhaging and paralysis and blindness. And so, as he's coming in to give us that talk, this young nurse, Saban, who couldn't have been more than 24, 25 years old, she sees our young daughter and knows that, gosh, she doesn't want her to hear about what her mother will go through the next day. And so she looks at my little 8-year-old daughter and says, "Hey, I need an assistant. Can you come help me? I have to do a couple things." And so my daughter gazed up at this, young, wonderful woman and says, "Absolutely." And so she follows her off. And for the next 20 or 30 minutes, the doctor then tells us all these horrible things. And my daughter, gets picked up by a friend, and now it's just Beth and I. And Beth says to me, "I need you to go home and get the time capsule." I said, "Well, honey, we're going to do that on our vacation, our 10-year anniversary. I don't want to do it in the hospital." She says, "Well, you've just listened to the doctor rattle on all these horrible things. We may not have tomorrow. And if I'm here tomorrow, I may not be able to even physically or mentally be able to share it with you. I want you to go home and get it." So I drove 20 minutes back to my house. I went and got the time capsule and came back to the hospital. And for the next 2 hours, we opened it up and we read all the things, and we laughed so hard and we cried even harder. And the emotions just washed over us. And during that time, Saban walks in and she sees what we're doing. She asks, and we said, we explained to her the time capsule and what it was. She goes, "Oh, that's so fantastic. I'm engaged to be married. I'm going to get one of those time capsules." And, we finished up and we went to bed. She went to bed there, and I sat in a chair next to her. And at 5 o'clock in the morning, there's a tap on my shoulder. And there's this envelope, and there's Savannah, and she's handing me this, and she says, hey, I want you to, to have this. I thought it was more forms or documents. And she said, my shift ends, but I want to make sure to give this to you. And Beth woke up, and I looked at it, and it said, to the Glassmans, happy 20th anniversary, open in 2017. And I began to cry, because what this nurse had told us was, hey guys, I'm providing you hope. You're going to be great. And I have all the faith that in 10 years from now, you'll be opening up another time capsule. And that, from a nurse who was obviously very busy, we're on a floor with very sick people. She not only took the time to take my daughter and walk around with her for 20 or 25 minutes so my daughter wasn't exposed to that horrific discussion, which in and of itself was unbelievable and selfless. Then, although she has these patients and she's working all night, she spent some time to put together a little package. It wasn't very big. It wasn't, obviously it was just some thoughts, some prayers, some shared things of her life and everything else, so that we knew that, hey, she believed in us, and that 10 years from then, we would be opening up another time capsule. And that kindness was so overwhelming and powerful that I took that time capsule that she did in that little manila envelope, and I put it up on my wall at my office, so that I made sure that that was the first thing in the morning when I walked to work, that I remembered the kindness that somebody provided me in her time, and that I should share that kindness with every other person I met that day. And it's the last thing I would see at the end of the day. So I knew that I would take that kindness home with me. And so that is one of the most powerful stories about somebody that we talked about, that in somebody else's time of need, where she could have just done her job and taken our vitals and write down our records and do her job, which was amazing enough. But she did so much more. And to this day now, so many years later, we're 14 years later, and I still never forget what she has done and what this young nurse has done. And it's a life lesson that I will take with me, and hopefully, pass it on to somebody else, whether it's my children or someone else from the book, because that little act of kindness had such a profound effect on our lives.
That's an incredible story.
Yeah, and there's many other stories, and anybody on your podcast or whoever wants it, I'm happy to share the story with them, and Beth's story, because like I said, if she can carry on and live on and inspire and help, even one person, then I'm so very thankful for you, Michael, for letting me come on this podcast and kind of tell a little bit about her life story.
I'm so thankful to have you on, and I just really appreciate you coming on and being so brave to share this story, because I can't even imagine how it must feel reliving the emotions, and like I was mentioning, I think that's real true bravery, and I would love to help you get your book out as much as you'd like. I don't want to make you feel pressured or whatever, but I'd be happy to. I can get it on the website. I can get it. I can have it be a link to this.
Yeah,
to this
that would be my
podcast
pleasure.
if you'd
Anybody
like.
that's interested into it, the way that I, initially when I wrote the book, as I told you before, Michael, I'm not an author, never intended to be one. I wanted to make sure that I had that story for at least two people, which are her two children, and I wanted them to have that book and those memories, and to kind of be an understanding of that journey, and and how proud they should be, and that I know that they are of their mother. But if it can help any other people, as we said before, it just means that her life and the lives of all these other great people in this book live on forever.
Yeah, and like not only live on, but shining on.
Shine on.
Inspiring others.
Yeah, that would be wonderful. So, and if anybody has some questions or I can help anybody, certainly you can put my contact information on. And if I can help anyone as others have helped me, it would be my pleasure.
I think that's so remarkable and commendable of you. And just over and over again, you're proving that you're a superhero.
Well, thank you, Michael. It was such a pleasure to be on your show. And, I will tell you, I know you were a teacher and everything else, and we talked about a poem. There's a great poem by Taylor Malley, it's a slam poet by a teacher, and it was a very valuable lesson that I learned, and it's entitled, "What Do You Make?" And I would, tell everybody to take a look at it, because it can really put into perspective, the things that we have the power to do with our lives.
So one thing I can do too is I can put that in the video description. And
that would be perfect.
I think that's so important. I think creating is far more important than we think. And so I'm incredibly excited to check out that poem. And that's actually another thing I was just talking to somebody else with today, because we're talking about gardening and the importance of finding different ways for you to create and express yourself.
Well, that's wonderful. Well, thank you again, Michael. And like I said, I look forward to you finding more and more superheroes and helping people be empowered to that. In your book and what you do is incredible. And I thank you so much for that.
So I do have one final question, final quick question, if that's okay.
Of course.
And so that is, do you have any final tips that you would like to give to our budding superheroes?
I think the most important thing that I will tell you is, it's not your deficits that make you a superhero. It's how you overcome those, and the strength that you have and the empowerment you have is what makes you the superhero. It's never what I don't have. It's what can I create, what can I find, and what do I have that makes me a superhero that everybody needs to find, because each one of us have the absolute empowerment to be great superheroes. We just need to find our way and our power.
You sum that up so beautifully. So you are an author. I think you are incredibly good at storytelling, incredibly good at writing, and I can't wait to finish reading your book. What I've read so far has already been really fantastic, and I'm so impressed by you and proud of you and thankful for you. You are a fantastic human being. I'm so glad that you immortalized your wife, and you just set such a positive example. I'm sure I'm missing other kind of things that I could say, but I think you get the idea.
Well, thank you, Michael, and what you do is wonderful, and I'm glad that I've got a new superhero friend in my life with you. So I certainly appreciate it, and look forward to watching your podcast and all the incredible things that you do. And thank you again.
Thank you so much, and I feel the same way. I'm so glad to have met you and made a new friend and get to hear your story and get to be inspired by your story. So thank you so much, and thank you again for coming on today.
My pleasure. You take care, Michael.
All right, thanks, you too. Take care, audience. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you have a great day and a great every day.